Hello there, everybody, and welcome to the Retro Classic Movie Show on the Entertainment Headquarters. And joining me, I have two special guests. We have Mr. DJ Anubis of the Metal Tavern Radio, and we also have, as you can see, DJ Neko is joining us. Yeah,
In her cat form.
in her cat form. That is correct. So, as you know, myself and DJ Anubis are cat lovers, but DJ Neko there is jealous that he has all the fame and is on camera, so has decided to interrupt. Oh,
Yeah, she doesn't really know exactly what to deal with right now because we're actually babysitting one of my wife's friends, worker friends, his little kitten. So it's upstairs, locked away in the bedroom. So
cool.
Hazel and Nick will get to touch paws and growl and see what's going on, but they don't know what quite to make of little Binks, who's like all black. I mean, little kitten,
Little
nice little
Binks.
cat. Yeah.
Hocus
So,
Pocus, I guess that the things.
yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
So anyway, for those that have watched this segment on my channel, this is, like I said, the Retro Classic Movie Show, where we talk about movies anywhere from the 1970s up to the early 2000s. Last month was my pick, and now this month is DJ Anubis's pick. And my good friend Char has picked a classic from, once again, the 1980s, and it is definitely a classic. I definitely think it's a film that doesn't really get talked about much, but definitely deserves to, because it is one of John Claude Van Damme's first, I guess, movies as like a major star in Hollywood. And I'm talking about this classic. It is, of course, Cyborg, which I believe came out as a 1985.
Actually, 89. Yeah.
89.
Same year as Bloodsport.
The same year as Bloodsport, but obviously everybody loves Bloodsport,
Mm-hmm.
and obviously this one doesn't really get mentioned as much as that one. So, what was your reason behind picking Cyborg?
Well, it's interesting because obviously, when I saw this, it was after I'd seen Bloodsport and stuff like that. So clearly, I was trying to take in more Van Damme, see what else he was in. And of course, this I saw, and I actually had this on VHS. I showed it a while back in one of my Facebook photos, but. Uh, I watched it. I liked it, and it definitely has a different vibe to Bloodsport. Even though you do see some of Van Damme's martial arts in this, but I think Bloodsport kind of accentuated his martial arts in that one.
Definitely.
This one is a bit more of a dystopian, post-apocalyptic type of film.
Yeah, cyberpunk feel, style to it.
Now, the funny thing is, like, a lot of the stuff we'll be talking about, like, is about like how it came about, and uh, this actually happened by accident. This particular film, which is very, very interesting to me. But uh, yeah, I don't know. When it comes to this film, I oftentimes find myself coming back to it a lot more than anything else in his catalog, which is very surprising because I love films like Bloodsport, Kickboxer, Lionheart. But for whatever reason, I always find myself watching this one the most. And people are going to be like, well, what the hell? Why? Like, it's not really the top tier of his stuff. But I'm like, for me, it is because I love the grittiness about it. And I
Mm-hmm.
love the soundtrack is amazing by Kevin Basison, who
Yeah.
took over the soundtrack for it. I really like that a lot. And then the characters themselves, like once you've kind of gone through the actors that are in this, you'll find that you've seen a couple of them before in other films, like Ralph Moeller, who plays Brick. He was in Gladiator. And what was the other one he was in more recently that I'd seen? Universal Soldier. So he was in there as well. So you
Mm-hmm.
see his face a lot. And then, of course, what's his name? The main guy, Kevin Clint, I think is his name, or Vincent
Yes,
Klyn.
the,
So
the
he,
one. Yes, the one is the one villain.
yeah, you see him in movies like Point Break. Uh, I think he was in another film that I just can't place at the moment. But Point Break is the one I remember the most because he was. The funny thing about Clint is he was actually a surfer, and
Yeah.
the director had seen him on and said, "Man, he's got a good physique. He's got like this kind of like scolding look, like just like your bitch face, I guess." And so he said to himself, you'd probably make a good villain in my film. And so that's how Klyn got the job. But more interesting is that he apparently had a high voice, and so they had to dub over his voice, which is kind of
Yes.
surprising. So, but the guy that did the voiceover for him was Branscombe Richmond, who was an actor producer who you'd seen as one of the villain guys in like Action Jackson, Commando, or even Hard to
Mm-hmm.
Kill. So I find that very interesting too. But as far as his look, Vincent was very intimidating. Like that final scene that we'll get to, the fight, he is menacing in that shit. Like that's scary shit.
You just look at him though. He looks like a badass.
Yeah,
He just
yeah.
he looks like I'll just quickly show an image. Yeah,
Hmm.
especially with the contact lenses in, and just his presence
Yeah,
alone just looks like a badass. And as you know, the opening sequence of this, where him and his gang are just walking towards into this dumpster fire of a shambled, destroyed city, just looks
yeah.
amazing. But yeah, I remember seeing this. I was a lot older when this came out. But sorry, when I seen this, it came out in 1989. I was born in 1983, so I was still very young. So I think I just caught this late night on television one night. But instantly, I think it had literally just started, and it was like the starting credits, and I just seen the name John Claude Van Damme, and that was all I needed. So as soon as I seen John Claude Van Damme, I was like, right, I need to check this out. And the one thing I noticed a lot about this movie with John Claude Van Damme in particular, he doesn't have much dialogue.
Right.
He's very much mute for the majority of the movie. He says like the odd line, but it made me wonder, because obviously was his English not that great at the time, and did they not give him much dialogue and just focus on, because if you notice his story throughout the combination of the movie, it's mostly told in flashbacks.
Yes.
You find out his motivations, and you find out the reasoning why he's hunting down Finder, and why he's basically protecting this girl that he finds, and all this stuff. And it made me wonder if it was deliberately done that way because that was the story they were trying to tell, or because of his limitations of the English language, did they deliberately just not put as much dialogue in for him to speak?
Well, this I found interesting about the film, which I had no idea ever knew about this. So Pyun, who is the director,
Yeah.
his original cut of Cyborg was 2 hour black and white rock opera that was much
Oh,
darker and more violent. John Claude Van Damme's dialogue, including the extensive narration, was dubbed by another actor. So possibly because he was struggling
yeah.
with English at the time. But Canon held a test screening of the version for an audience of 100. Of the 100 surveyors, 99 of them said they hated the film. So as a result, Pyun was kicked out of post production. Van Damme convinced Golan and Globus to give him and his producer 2 months to re-edit the film. So I think that's why a lot of this dialogue is kind of cut out for Van Damme, because
Yeah.
either he still struggles with the language, and whatever dialogue he had was not going to match what they were doing, and it's not black and white anymore. So
Yeah.
uh, it is a
All the
weird thing to
yeah.
see, but then again, it kind of works because his character is dealing with like trauma from his own
Yeah.
past. So you kind of just think he's like a quiet assassin or a quiet slinger, is basically what he is.
Mhm.
And so to me, it does kind of work, but this stuff here, I didn't even know. I did like, but it makes sense because the names of the characters are all based around musical instruments like
Yes.
Fender,
Yeah.
Rockenbacker, you know. So I thought that
Yeah.
was kind of cool.
Yeah. Well, let's talk a little bit about it before we, deep dive into the story and stuff. So Cyborg is a 1989 American martial arts cyberpunk film directed by Albert Pyun. John Claude Van Damme stars as Gibson Rickenbacker, a mercenary who battles a group of murderous marauders led by Fender Tremolo, who's played by Vincent Klyn, alongside the east coast of the United States in a post-apocalyptic future. It was followed by the sequel Cyborg 2 and Cyborg 3, The Recycler. I've never seen either of them.
The second one, I would suggest maybe giving it a shot. I'm not going to say it's a world beater, but it has Elias Koteas, who went on to star in Law and Order SVU years later. And then the main female was Angelina Jolie, a very young Angelina Jolie. So it's kind of an interesting little movie there.
Yeah. So definitely some exciting stuff there. But the cast consists of John Claude Van Damme as Gibson Rickenbacker, Deborah Richter as Maddie Simpson, Vincent Klyn as Fender Tremolo, Dayle Haddon as Pearl Prophet, Alex Daniels as Marshall Stratt, Blaise Loong as Furman Vux, Pirate/Bandit, and Ralph Muller as Brick Bordeaux, credited as Ralph Muller. Oh, and you also had Haley Peterson as Haley, who comes into this in a bit, and Jackson Rock Pinkney as Tyrish the Pirate. So quite a strong cast in this. And of course, the story is very simple. It says a martial artist hunts a killer in a plague-infested urban dump of the future. that is basically the plot synopsis I've got here on my screen here. But where would you like to start, Mr. DJ Anubis?
Well, I mean, best way is just kind of start from the beginning. I had a soundbite, which doesn't really matter at this point, but basically it kind of starts out where you get this narration by supposedly Fender, which is of course dub, but it basically says, they're facing this dystopia where the plague had taken place and it was killing a lot of people. And the idea was they have a cyborg that's going to collect information for a cure. But in the narration, Fender's saying like, "I like this world. I like death. I don't want anything better. He likes what it is. He likes this world." And so that's kind of a creepy introduction to our villain and what he stands for in this post-apocalyptic universe. So it kicks off, obviously. Pearl Prophet is the cyborg we're talking about, and she's already got the information she needs, but they're now on their way back to Atlanta to give that data to the last remaining scientists on the planet. And she has like this escort. Go ahead.
Yeah. I was just going to say the one thing that really immediately, because like I say, I've never watched it for years. I still think it reminded me of scenes in Total Recall. So obviously there's the Prophet there. And then you do, when after she's kind of ran away from the marauders and find her, she then bumps into Rackleback and she reveals to him that she is a cyborg. And you actually have this amazing scene where she removes her hair and you see the back of her head and all the cybernetics. And you actually have like a flashback of when she's being created.
Yeah.
Which I think's amazing. And obviously, he kind of saves her or attempts to save and protect her. And I think the story goes, Finder wants her because obviously there's some data that she's been able to get her hands on, which has information to help them find the cure to this plague. But Finder wants to control the plague so basically he can monopolize the world. and basically
Yep.
keep it the way it is and play like God, basically. He's like this
That's what he says, like,
egomaniac.
I'd be
Yeah,
a god.
yeah, yeah. And some of the dialogue in this is amazing. I love some of the scenes that his character particularly says in this, but obviously he's not as successful in protecting her, and Finder does eventually get his hands on the prophet. And
Right.
once he gets his hands on her, he then makes a decision that he wants to actually go to Chicago. So I think his idea is to get to Chicago, take over this lab that's going to produce the cure to the plague, and then basically monopolize the world and control it.
Yeah. So now in this early sequence before Gibson steps in, Pearl has like an escort who is telling her, you need to run, I'm going to try to protect you, but of course he ends up getting his ass kicked, and then that's it for him. But Gibson, of course, he tries to avoid being shot by some of the henchmen, and he falls into like a like area where some wood falls on top, so they think he's dead and gone at that point. That's when they capture Pearl, and they're on their way to Atlanta. Now they got to get a boat, so they're going to some other local city where they're going to trash the shit out of the village there and steal the boat, because that's just what they do. They don't care. They're like pirates, and they're just kill whoever and whatever they want.
The best quote that Fender says is, he says, "I like the death, I like the misery, I like the world."
Yeah.
Which I just, in the fact that I know it's not his real voice, but they've got a dubbed actor. This kind of scenario, the fact that you've got an actor and then you've got somebody dubbing, reminds me of James Earl Jones, who does Darth Vader. You have an actor doing the body performance, and then you've got somebody bringing the character to even more life by having a voiceover actor.
Yeah, because apparently when they tried to use Vincent's initial voice, the audience was laughing because it was that high. It wasn't like, I don't know how high it is, but apparently it was not matching the vibe that was going on. So that's when they made the choice to dub over it. But whoever did the dubbing, like I said, by Branscombe, like, did a really good job. It doesn't look weird. It fits with the image that Vincent portrays. So it's like, it works. And it's very creepy. It's like a very, very dark voice. And the dialogue that you mentioned, it's when the escort is like being beaten up, and he's like, we have a chance to make a cure. He's like, I want to own it. I want to be God. And then he's like, yeah, but we could save the world. He's like, I like the world. Yeah, he likes this world.
He also says, I'll take you to Atlanta, and you'll give me the cure. And if you don't, I'll give you the horror show. Which, just quotes like that they just stand out for all the right reasons. And the fact that it isn't his voice, but this deep voice actor, it just makes his character look even more menacing.
Yep. Yeah, it's really kind of strange because I'm trying to remember, because like I said, I remember Klyn when he was in Point Break as one of the surf Nazis, and obviously Anthony Kiedis from Red Hot Chili Peppers in that group too. But again, Klyn was already basically a big time surfer, so he was already fitting that role a lot. But he looks so menacing, so the fact that his voice isn't actually used is kind of weird. But again, whoever, like with Richmond doing the voiceover, it works, and it works really well with his character now. But it's just weird that it doesn't actually have that voice when you actually read about it. But anyway, so they get the boat and they start on their way to another part of the shore to get to Atlanta. And of course, Gibson is very familiar with the map on where they're going and how they're going to get there. But he's at the village where it's been ransacked and people have been killed. And then he almost gets jumped by a figure who he disables. And that turns out to be our second protagonist with Nadie Simmons, who's a young girl who she was part of the village, but she hid while they were attacking. Yeah, that's her there. And so he waits around just kind of looking after her because he did knock her ass out. But, that's where she's slowly wakes up a few hours later and doesn't know if she can trust him or not, but he's kind of like, okay, it's fine. And at that point, that's when she's like, she knows about the cyborg. She knows that there's a possible cure for the plague. So she's inquiring to the slinger about whether or not he's going to go after her and try to save the world. And he's more about revenge because he knows who Fender is from his own past. So now his goal is just to kill Fender. And of course, Nady, she's more about trying to save the woman, the cyborg, to get her to where she needs to be to save the world. So they both have their own reasons for going after. But at first, he's kind of like, "Well, you go save her if you think that's what you need to do." He's kind of like he's a loner. He doesn't want to really have to have this girl tagging along, but she's kind of like keeping him company anyway. It's just we know that's how it's going to play out.
There's even a scene where she tries to seduce him.
Yeah, well, that's a very interesting scene for a lot of reasons. It's actually when of course, they fight through some other, I don't know what you would call them, bandits or whatever, before they get to the shore. And obviously, this is like a dystopia. So she's pretty brazen. She's like, okay, we're camping here? Great. So she takes her clothes off, runs in the water to clean up. And of course, Van Damme's kind of like, yeah, I don't want to look at that, but yeah, I'll look anyway. But by the time the evening comes, he's already washed up and they're both sitting there by the fire. She figures he's going to leave in the morning to go chase down Fender. And so she figures, well, maybe she'll get some pooty, some booty time before he leaves, and tries to seduce him. But it's kind of like, nah, it's okay. I do respect you enough not to do that.
I do think it's also because of the past with him and Fender, because obviously during the flashback sequences, we discover that I don't know if he was paid or if he was just asked to help this family, this mother and two girls, to like go from one place to the other. And during this time, he then builds an attraction to the mother of the two girls.
Yeah, Mary.
Mary, and he then obviously falls for the mother, and they end up getting romantically interlinked. And during this time, Fender mustn't be like on the level he is now as like the leader, but he comes across them at some point and he tortures them.
Yeah.
And there's a horrible death scene which you don't see at this point, but you kind of get the gist that Fender's got a past with Ritterback, and you can now understand why he's following him and why he's after him. He wants revenge.
Yeah, I did like that too, because they did really make them look younger in terms of like, because it's the main ones you see that you recognize is Fender, of course, and then the other guy played by Blaise Loong, who is Furman Bucks, who uses like the staff.
Yeah.
So you recognize those two as younger versions of themselves, but now they're older, of course, and he has a bigger gang. I think at the time it was probably just 2 or 3 of them.
Yeah.
And so they come across Gibson and Mary and them, and we, like as you said, we haven't got to like what exactly happened between them, but we do know that they're there and they're looking at them through the window of this house that this life they're trying to build. So it's basically Gibson, Mary, Haley, and this young boy.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. So after this point, Gibson, he does catch up to them after the boat, and there's like this. I guess it's like in like a industrial area, and in the industrial area, Fender and his men are looking around the area, and in the distance, I think they do see Gibson and Nady. They see them two kind of walking towards there, and they hide. Next thing you know, as they're walking in this industrial area, Fender's standing there, and I think Gibson's like, I want you to Nady's like, I want you to hide. I don't want you to do anything. I need you to just keep away. But obviously, as always, she doesn't listen. and she kind of
Well, yeah,
wanders off
she was
on
basically like, she's all like, well, you're not trying to save the woman. I can't let you do anything that's going to harm her. And he's like, look, nothing's going to happen to her, but I can't have you with me because you're going to get a distraction, basically.
She's the
So he's trying to
liability.
keep her. He's trying to keep her safe, but she's hard headed and she wants to do things. So she does stay for a moment, and then of course when she decides to go wander off is when she gets caught.
Yes. Yeah, and then you have that scene with Fender where he's standing and you can just see Natty lying unconscious in front. And
Yeah.
Nate starts, Gibson starts trying to fight them off a bit. And he then actually sees the Prophet, and the Prophet is like, I'm going with Fender because he's
You're
going to
not
take me.
strong enough.
You're not strong enough. And next thing you know, Gibson and his men's all over him. He fights them one by one. And he does, in some bits, get like the upper hand on them. But then eventually he has to stop because he's distracted. And he's distracted by the approach of a young woman. And the young woman turns out to be an adult Haley, who basically she's now a part of Finder's gang, I believe now. So
Yeah,
this is
she was taken from obviously Gibson and them when she was younger, and I haven't really figured out. There was a moment that you see her on the boat, and like it's kind of like a distant. It doesn't last long, but I couldn't tell if like she was being used as like just sex for the men or for Fender. Like she did belong to Fender, but I didn't know like if she was just basically his girlfriend or because I couldn't tell if she was halfway naked or not in that scene. It was like a little bit dark, so it was really hard to see like what was going on there with that. But then we do see another scene where in the same boat where she's clothed and she's kind of looking at Pearl and Pearl's looking at her and there's not much being said, but clearly Fender took her for his own property at that point when they were younger. And as you said, now she's a little bit older and she doesn't necessarily remember Gibson, but
he recognizes her via the necklace that he has around her neck.
Yeah.
Because Gibson had a necklace, and he obviously gives her the necklace, and that's how he instantly recognizes that it's her.
Yep.
And that's a huge distraction to Gibson, and he's able to break away and he's able to rescue Nate and Natty, and then they kind of run away after being shot at, fighting.
This is my favorite part of the movie.
Yes, mine too. So, like, break away, the fight, the find like this sewage, the say, a sewer cap. They remove it and they decide to go down into the sewers to get away. After the prophets basically refuse to help, so they're now basically fighting for survival and they're working their way through the sewer when suddenly one of the main henchmen is Fender, this guy.
That's Brick there. That's Brick, yeah.
He is fucking phenomenal. He looks amazing. Yep. He goes down into the sewers and obviously in pursuit, not knowing where Fender is. And this is one of my favorite shots of this film. Because Gibson knows he's being chased and he knows he's getting chased by the biggest of the members of the Pirates or the Marauders. So there's this beautiful, I love the camera work. I love the cinematography of this. I absolutely adore the lighting of this. It looks phenomenal. So as he's approaching, there's like lights coming down from like holes or other sewer caps from the roofs, letting the sunlight shine into the sewer system. When all of a sudden he approaches an area, and as he's getting closer and closer, and the light shining down at a certain, he doesn't know where Gibson is. And the camera suddenly pans up, and it's the classic. It's the John Van Damme splits.
Yeah.
And he looks up, and at the end of the day, this shot alone is phenomenal.
Yeah.
And obviously Brick has like this inkling that there's something not right, there's something hanging above him, and as he looks up, there's Gibson, and he just boom hits him and kills him, and you hear him scream. And it's one of the best sequences in this film. And obviously that's when him and Nadie then decide to continue getting out, and they find another staircase, climb up out of another sewage hole, and they're somewhere near like a giant lake area with giant
it's like a marsh,
like a marsh area, and they're running across the marsh, when suddenly the rest of the marauders find the body of Brick, and they're enraged.
Yeah.
And this is when I think the woman, I don't know which one, the one that discovers him, she's absolutely enraged. Because
I've been trying to find out like who, because they don't really, they list a couple of women, but because there's 2 women warriors, which I thought was phenomenal because I really liked that part of it.
Yeah.
One, I think their last name was Glazer or something, but the other one, I just don't know. There's no information on it, but it's too bad because like I thought every single one of them had their own kind of identity. There was even a guy that eventually kind of lasted toward the end. He reminded me a little bit of God damn, what's his name? The football player did Stone Cold. Bosworth. He kind of reminds me look a little bit of Brian Bosworth a little bit. But yeah, each one like Brick, and then they all had their own identity, which is really, really cool.
Yeah. But anyway, they go chasing after, especially the lady. She goes bombing after them, and there's they kind of split up. Him and Nadie split up. So obviously, this scene as well was amazing in the marshlands with Gibson. And which character is this? Because he's one of the ones that you see during the flashback.
Yeah, that's Furman Vux. That's played by Blaise Loong there.
Yeah, Blaise Loong. He is amazing in it, and they have a mini fight sequence. But as much as I like that fight sequence, I found the fight sequence between Nadie and the female marauder better, and even the female marauder gets her hand cut off, but she still manages to knock out Nadie. And after she knocks Nadie out, she then crumbles to the floor into the water and dies herself.
Yeah.
But that was amazing. But then eventually, when you think all's done, unfortunately, Fender and his men are overpower Gibson.
Yeah, and I like that about this film too, is that they're actually using fatigue. So like they're doing a lot of running, they're being chased, and so that's taking a lot of out of you energy wise. Of course, Van Damme's character is having to fight a lot. Each one of these guys. Now, luckily for him, they're not all together at once until the very end. So there's like this space between each one as they're chasing. That's what makes this particular scene so great throughout the thing, because it's Brick. He's running around, and then of course they got the chick, and she's probably like a minute behind him, and then of course Vux is like another minute behind her. So like it's kind of like just stacking up, and then eventually Gibson he's wore out. Like he's been fighting Vux for a while in the water, which slows you down.
It's done in such a believable, realistic way. Like
correct.
Like the timing of it all, and like basically how it's dragged out, but it's done in an authentic, realistic way, which would probably generally happen. You would probably generally see these characters if they were like when the police, if you see these videos and the police are chasing down a criminal, you see them slowing down, or you see them breathing heavy. You can see that they're getting worn out, and generally when that happens, the criminal potentially could have escaped being pursued, which I always find hilarious. Especially when you see sometimes the criminals outmaneuver the police officers. And then I've even seen one where the young criminal have climbed up a roof, and they've climbed up the sewer pipe, and they're looking down, and the overweight cop, or the cop's out, he's looking around, and he looks in the most stupidest places ever. He looked behind a box or something. You know, a person would not be able to physically fit behind a box. Or they'll go and they'll look behind like a bin, but the bin you can tell will be too small. And it's like, how the hell did you become a police officer? It's like stuff like that always makes us laugh. And then you always get the criminal looking down, and he's like just chilling out on the roof, and it's like, how does this happen? But anyway, great. So this is the point where Gibson, unfortunately, is then strung up with barbed wire to this cross here. And this is where you find out the final why he's pursuing Fender and why he has absolute hate for him.
Yeah.
You know, this was a scene prior to him getting strung up when he fights Fender, and Fender gets the upper hand against him and knocks him out. And then he got strung up. You then start to hallucinate because obviously he's exhausted, and you then discover the full, the full negativeness and the full trauma what he's been through. So basically, he fell for Lucy and was protecting the kids. Fender found them, he tortured them, he had barbed wire, and he tied the young boy, I'm assuming Haley's brother and Lucy, up in barbed wire over
it was
the top.
Actually all three of them. So they had Gibson, Mary, and the boy, and so they had he did the atypical, like, okay, Haley, now granted she's much younger, like a child, like a young girl, and so he says, you can save them, you just got to hold on to this barbed wire, and then don't let them fall. But of course the weight difference is like a massive,
and the fact that barbed wire as well,
right. So as it's slipping through her hands, it's cutting her up, and of course Fender knows this. He's purposely doing this.
And so obviously because of the weight, you said the weight restrictions, barbed wire cutting into her hand, and for Haley leaves go or loses control of the barbed wire, and then you see a scene of the three of them plummet. But unfortunately, Gibson must have been the only one who survived the fall and manages to climb out of the well, and then is obviously, due to that traumatic experience, goes on a path of vengeance against Fender, and you finally understand his anguish, his anger, his frustrations, and his thirst for revenge, and his absolute hatred of Fender, who is the big bad. And he is in. There's a particular photo that I put up before by accident, but I thought, for me, when it comes to Fender, it just makes him look like a complete evil tyrant.
Oh, he's a psychopath.
He's a complete utter psychopath. Is this the one? No, that's trying. Oh, I think this is it. This one here with the knife. He just looks like a complete and utter psycho. But I don't know why I'm getting images of Shang Tsung from Mortal Kombat here. I could definitely see him as a part of the Mortal Kombat franchise, just his look alone in this movie.
Right.
But once this is all done, they then have made it to Atlanta, and then of course he breaks free out. He uses his frustration and his anger to break free of the cross, and basically him and Naddie then decide to go after, for one more time, Fender and the gang. And this is where there's the final battle in this rainy area, and one by one Gibson's just taking the shit out of Fender's men. And obviously Naddie's there, Haley's there, and there is a particular scene with Haley where she thinks Fender's gonna kill Gibson, and she basically wants him to stop. And she kind of knocks her out, knocks her out in a fight. But the whole end sequence is amazing, how he kind of goes one by one through the men and the women that are against him.
Yeah, there's the like I said, the one like really horrifying scene with Fender is basically, he's shirtless and it's raining and he's got like a blade and something else in the other, maybe another blade, and he's like just going rah, rah, and he looks almost like, just like, you want to say almost like a machine, but it's more like a monster. Like, it's just, he's almost inhuman. Yes, there you go. It's just like almost an inhuman type of behavior, and it's terrifying. Like, it's just, I'm watching, I'm like, Jesus Christ, dude, I don't know if I could fight that.
In the way he sounds, it sounds weird, but it sounds similar to Arnold Schwarzenegger. When he yells, he's got like this Arnold Schwarzenegger Terminator, I cannot be stopped, menacing kind of a persona about him. And you're completely hooked onto it when he is that way.
Yep.
Yeah. So when all comes to end, Fender fights Gibson, and Gibson is fighting for his life. And there was a couple of times where you thought Gibson had won, but Fender kind of bounces back until eventually they're fighting like in this warehouse type scenario where Gibson and Fender are fighting, and then suddenly Gibson gets the upper hand and he kind of does his, the signature John Claude Van Damme kick, which sends Fender bouncing into a giant hanging meat hook.
Yeah.
That is on the wall, which obviously it kills Fender. Me personally, when I first saw the title of Cyborg, I assumed that there was going to be a twist with Fender. I thought, well, especially when he collapsed on the floor the first time and got up, I thought he was secretly going to be some sort of cyborg himself.
That would have been interesting, yeah. And especially the way that we described his ending fight there, yeah.
Yeah, and the fact with the eyes. With them having them
the contacts,
the white contacts, and the fact that you had one cyborg introduced who was like the good cyborg who's attempting to obviously find a cure, and maybe he was he could have been a cyborg who went wrong, who wanted to just conquer the world, basically giving you like a prelude to see the Terminator series.
This is crazy because, like, regarding the lenses, right? So Vincent Klyn once recalled that because of the low budget of the film, that the only 2 pairs of contact lenses were made for his character. He would go on to say that he lost the first pair in an unspecified early scene, and then later on, while filming the final fight, he thought he had lost another. So filming had to immediately stop while the crew tried to find them, which allowed Klyn to return to his trailer. There, he discovered that one of the lenses had actually shifted up above his eyes. So once he blinked and got it back down, they could resume filming. But because they only had 2 pairs, that was going to really screw up the scene a little bit. So.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and then also, I guess Matthias Hughes turned down the role in the film, so he regretted doing that.
Oh, that would have been awesome to see him, but obviously.
There's a lot of weird things because, like, apparently the director, I think, was tied to Delta Force, which is a Chuck Norris thing.
Yes.
So they offered Cyborg to Chuck Norris. He didn't want it. But then they also offered Delta Force 2 to Van Damme, and he didn't want that. So go figure.
Yeah, I could see that, actually. I couldn't see it working, though, with Chuck Norris.
Yeah, it's one of those things like because now we look back on it, but it fits Van Damme a little more just because of the style fighting.
Yeah,
When I think of Norse, I always think of like missing in action, and of course Delta Force and stuff like that, which is a little bit more his speed in that regard. But yeah, so I don't know. Yeah, it was fine either way, but it's always interesting reading those kind of like trivia pieces.
yeah, yeah, definitely. So obviously, what happens after Fender's death? The Prophet is returned to, I guess, the science lab, and they now have the information to work on this cure for the plague. They offer Gibson a place to stay and to be a part of the community to rebuild the world, but he turns them down and kind of wanders off with Naddy back into the wilderness. And there's a scene where the leader of this science lab's like, oh, we can cure this cult, we can cure the plague, we now have the thing that's going to help us save the world. And she's kind of looking at Gibson, she's like, I think it's him. She
Yeah,
she looks at him and she looks at his character and seeing all he's done and how he's basically just been so like free and able to just do what he's done and not asked anything in return, and it's like he's just done it out of the goodness of his heart, like willingness to do it all. And she goes, he's like the hope we need. And I think it's basically him here seeing like good people in the world with good intentions and who want nothing but the best, for humanity. And she sees probably the best in humanity in Gibson.
Yeah.
And I think basically that's what she sees in him when she's staring at him. He's what we need. We need people like him in the world.
Yeah.
So in all, what's your final thought on Cyborg?
Well, it's funny because critical wise, it didn't do very well. They weren't very high on it, but it had a $500,000 budget, but scored over like $9 to $10 million at the box office, so it did very well.
Yes.
Generally, I don't ever like push for remakes or reboots, but I think in this day and age, like somebody could do this very well by maybe putting someone like Jason Statham or Iko Uwais in this and try to do like a modern version of it, which would be kind of cool.
Yes.
Not sure who you would make the villain, but
yeah, I could definitely say it's been like I say that 1989 was the original. You can just ignore the sequels if you want, but if you want to make a sequel to this, because it does have a bit of a legacy, this film, and we haven't had like a talks of a remake or anything of this one. So in this day and age, with the way reboots and remakes are going, I would like to see a shot at this, but it always worries you when they make a sequel or a legacy sequel, or a remake with today's audience. Is it going to be just a quick cash grab and they'll rush it out, or will it actually take the time to physically make it into something that could be great?
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. If you're gonna do it, at least do it right. Like, I mean, there's a lot of talented martial art actors out there that could do this work. And
if he was younger, I don't know if he would do it now. I don't know if he would be suitable for the role now. But I was thinking you could have Jason Statham as Gibson, and if he was maybe slightly younger, Vin Diesel would be a good Fender.
Yeah.
I could see Vin because you've seen his work as Riddick. I think but I don't think
he doesn't necessarily have to be a martial artist, because Fender really wasn't. Fender was just like a powerful dude, like just crazy. Yeah. And so Diesel could kind of get away with that.
Yeah. And they would just have to hire in a bit of different kind of martial arts or kung fu training or some sort of style, or they could just make him a brawler type. Just make him an all-out badass brawler. I think that would have worked, but you never know. Could you have something? Because I've noticed lately when I've mentioned the odd film, I suddenly a few days later get there's news of a remake, or there's a news of them talking about doing a television series or something. This could actually work as a mini series as well, if done right.
Mm-hmm.
See, a 10-episode
yeah.
mini series.
Yeah, I
And
mean,
then I
like,
think,
you know, they started. I know you and I haven't got to it, but for those about to die, like that's like from what I've seen of that so far, it's very good. So like, you could make
yes,
something like this that would work.
yes. Like, obviously, those about to die is very similar to Gladiator, but you don't
Mhm.
just get the backstory within a 2-hour movie. You get to actually see the world building and how, like, the economics of that time period when it comes to gambling and Romans and the Colosseum work. So it gives you a much more in-depth look at the world. And when it comes to Cyborg, you could very much build this huge world and go to different cities and then go to have different villains and heroes be brought in, you know, different
Yep.
factions. It could go in so many different directions, but as long as they kept to the core two main characters, hero and villain, and did them
Hmm.
justice, I think a mini series would work wonders under the
Definitely.
Cyborg name.
Absolutely.
So, in all, how do you feel about the film, like its legacy and all of that?
I
Still
still
think
like it
it
a
holds
lot.
up?
Oh yeah, I do. And maybe it's just more from a nostalgic point of view, but like I don't get bored of it. You know, special effects wise, it didn't really require a lot. Most of
Mm,
it was just basically, hey, let's throw some cocktails that Liz is on this villain, and then let's show a little bit of this, like as you said, classic Total Recall styled CGI or effects. You know, with the digital effects. Because even when you showed her back of her head as an android, you could see the little cogs moving. I thought that was like a very cool detail of the character. But um, yeah, I mean, look, it's not as polished as some of Van Damme's other stuff, obviously. And I wouldn't call this a 10 out of 10, but I would definitely still keep it around an 8.5 or 9.
yeah,
I still get a lot of enjoyment out of it, and like I said, I end up coming back to it a lot more than the others. Maybe it's because I've seen the others so many times.
yeah,
Uh, that you said at the beginning, this one's kind of gets forgotten in all his stuff
yeah,
because it's and even worse is another film that he's actually pretty good in is Black Eagle, and that's even an earlier film. So like you know,
yeah. I think what was that film many years ago where you were first introduced to John Claude Van Damme and he played a villain? I think he was a henchman.
That was Black Eagle. Yep.
Yeah, is that Black Eagle? I thought it was.
Hmm.
Like, I even
Yep.
remember him in that one, and I can
Yeah, I'm
remember how good
pretty sure Sho Kosugi was the hero in that one. I'm pretty sure.
I remember that years ago, and I always remember him playing a villain. And I always remember when I first seen that, that was the first time I really took a notice to John Claude Van Damme.
Hmm.
And obviously, since then, his career took off. But
Right.
as for me, I do think this is still a really good film. I love the world that it's based in. I love like the cyberpunk feel. The villain is iconic. Fender's iconic. Gibson's backstory is heartbreaking, and you really feel for him, and you really can understand the drive and the hunger for him going after Fender. I do. Do I think it holds up still today? It does and it doesn't for me. I do think there are pacing issues. I do think it drags on a little bit to get from A to B, but overall the action's great in this. Some of the fight scenes is brilliant in it, especially the sewer sequence. That's probably my all-time favorite in this movie. If I had to rate this, I'd probably give it 7 out of 10, which I still think's a fair rating. It like
Hmm.
I say, I haven't seen this for years and years, and I had this image in my head, and now I've seen it again after years from when I last seen it. It's still a great film, but it doesn't hold as up to me as much as maybe to you. But I would still watch this over and over again because it's still a very much an enjoyable film.
Yeah, it's a nice little film if you just want to kill some time and you're not doing anything. You know, it's good that even if it's in the background, like sometimes I'll just throw it on while I'm doing other shit. I'm like, I'll look up, check it out, go back to my work, and it's just fun. I like it.
Yeah, definitely. So that is Cyborg, revisiting another classic. What you got coming up on the Metal Tavern Radio, Mr. DJ Anubis?
So once we're done here, I'm probably going to prepare to do another species spotlight. I'll be doing tarantula on my collection called the Orange Baboon, and I'll be putting that together and putting that out today. Then, of course, going into next week, you and I will be joining forces again on Wednesday, the 13th, to discuss the first 2 episodes of Hysteria, which kind of delves into an 80s satanic panic type of thing, which was very triggering for me at first. But, you know, I do enjoy it because I lived through that period, so I know exactly what it was like to like heavy metal and stuff like that, and had people look at you like you were the spawn of Satan. But it does a lot of different things outside of that part of it, because it deals with murder and some other stuff that's going on.
It also has Bruce Campbell in a serious role for once.
Right, and he actually does a very good job at that too. So
yeah.
Later in the evening, Mr. Tony the Dead and I are doing another Ghouls of Midnight, and we're going to be doing my pick this time, which is Excalibur from 1981. Friday the 15th will be my first in my kaiju specials, which I'm doing for the next 2 or 3 months, where I'll be taking a guest, and then we're just going to sit down with a particular kaiju at random. I chose random kaiju for people to talk about. Now, obviously, with my first one with Sentry, it's going to be Rodan. That's kind of his boy. But for the rest of you guys, you were just kind of like, whether you kind of liked the character or not. I know you and I are going to be doing Kamunga, which may not be one of your favorites, but you and I talk about my spiders all the time. You're always interested in that. So I thought that'd be kind of cool to sit down with you and talk about kaiju that no one really talks about a lot anyway.
Yes, an underrated kaiju that doesn't get appreciation like a lot of underrated kaiju.
Right.
But looking forward to that.
But then by the end of the month, 29th, you and I will talk about your pick on cinematic Savage Dawn. So we're reviewing that. And then later I'll be doing another episode with Rick Myers for Action Film Autopsy, as some stuff is coming out for Samurai again. He's just kind of going through some stuff right now, but he's getting back to it. He's getting there.
Slowly but surely, he's going to be back.
Yeah. Then by the 30th, I'm getting together with Jedi Veil to do another kaiju special where we'll be talking about Jet Jaguar. And also, I do need to mention for next week, the 22nd, Goji 851 and I will be doing the kaiju Anguirus. So I'm trying to do at least one like a week if I can. So that's where I'm at with that. So awesome. That's what I got going on.
Yeah. Well, some awesome content. Everybody who watches this, please like, share, and subscribe to the Metal Tavern Radio, especially if you like a bit of heavy metal content alongside some great movie reviews and trailer reactions. He is the man to go to. His channel is the one to go to, the Metal Tavern Radio. As for the entertainment headquarters, like he's mentioned, next Wednesday we have episodic adventures where we're doing the first 2 Hysteria episodes, and then we also have coming on the 16th of November, we are doing an Into the Darkness franchise review on Candyman, which was scheduled for a few weeks now, where we have also now just heard the unfortunate and sad news of the legendary Tony Todd's passing. May you rest in peace. May you rest well. So that was just happened to be coincidence that we chose that franchise for the next conversation and discussion. And it's come around the right time, and we're gonna hopefully do a good job in honoring you and your legacy. And then on top of, like you said, cinematic synergy, we also on the 30th of November, right at the end of the month, we will be doing a Kaiju Connections review, and we're going to be doing 1955's Tarantula, which is something I'm very much looking forward to. But this has been a blast as always. This has been the Entertainment Headquarters and the Retro Classic Movie Show. Keep on enjoying your movies and keep on enjoying all things entertainment. And we'll catch us all at the next one.